Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners Committee of the Whole for July 7th. Pardon me. Will come to order, please. Will come to order. Thank you. Thank you. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Beezer, Commissioner Morales, Commissioner Ray, Chair Strips,
Here.
Vice Chair Taylor, Commissioner Wheeler, Commissioner Duluth,
Here.
Commissioner Gisler,
Here.
Vice Chair Pro Tem Hepler.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you, Clerk. Commissioner Wheeler has informed me she's just running behind. There is a traffic backup on the highway, so she will be joining us as soon as she can. All right, we'll move forward to item number 2. This is our first opportunity for public comment. Members of the public can address the board on any topic of interest. You have up to 3 minutes to interact with us in a professional and respectful manner. Once you're recognized, please share your name and where you're from. Is there anybody wishing to join us for public comment? Please come forward. I am seeing no one coming forward for public comment. All right, with that, we will close public comment. And we will move to a review of accounts payable and payroll disbursements. And we'll welcome our esteemed Finance Director, Mr. Ryan Post. Welcome, Director.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair Pro Tem, Board of Commissioners. This evening, we have an accounts payable claims list totaling $10,518,501.14 is presented for review. Of this total, the Board of Commissioners is asked to approve claims totaling $8,670,659.14. Payroll disbursements totaling $9,277,285.47 are presented for the June 18th general, June 30th elected, and July 2nd general and special payrolls. With that said, we welcome any questions from the Board of Commissioners at this time.
Questions, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be able to answer this myself, but just to get a confirmation. The reason the payroll expenses are so high is because we had like 3 different pay periods in this particular board meeting. Usually they're not that high, correct?
That's absolutely correct. It was just the overlap in the timing from the previous board meeting, from the time that those were paid out and received for today's meeting.
Good. Any additional questions? All right, I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for that. Nothing further.
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 4. This is an update on the keys to Kalamazoo housing framework. And we will welcome our housing director and deputy housing director, Mary Balkova, Willard de Toronto. Welcome, ladies. That's right. Oh.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair Pro Tem, Board of Commissioners. My name is Mary Balkova. I'm joined by Willard de Toronto. We're the your housing team, and we are going to talk about the background and our progress on the keys to Kalamazoo. We are going to wait 1 minute until Terrell gets the PowerPoint up for you to follow. It was also in your packet. So maybe we will just start with the background. Is that good?
We can see it, yeah. I know the commissioners have it, but maybe so members of the public are able to see. So we'll give them just a minute. We can't bring it up, then we'll move forward. But go ahead, Director.
Sure. So as way of background, the framework was drafted in 2025 in consultation with representatives from the city of Kalamazoo, Southwest Michigan First, the United Way, the Kalamazoo County Land Bank, and other stakeholders. The framework set 3 pillars. 1, reducing housing instability, expanding access to shelter and housing, and strengthening coordination across housing systems. And last December, you received a $23.3 million donation committed to supporting the Keys to Kalamazoo initiatives within the framework. So that was the first of 3 allocations that the county would receive.
We received a third of that in December 2025. And so we just wanted to provide a brief update on those funded initiatives for all of you now that we're at the 6-month point. And so the first initiative that was funded was the landing place. We got some construction gap financing as well as operations funding for the landing place. The project, we had our ribbon cutting back at the end of April, and the project began accepting families in the beginning of May. I was on vacation last week, but as of June 18th, there was 48 families occupying 50 rooms. I think there's over 150 children currently. The PowerPoint says that the final punch list is being completed, but I believe we got the C of O.
We do. So we have the certificate of occupancy. The city is all good with what we're doing there.
So we are, working closely with Family Promise as well as our Buildings and Grounds team to continue to, as things come up, address different issues and things that we might be able to tweak in terms of the facility. But overall, things are going really well there right now.
I'd just like to ask a question there. Has there been, a little patriotism? There we go. That's okay, Commissioner. Have we worked up shelter transition refinement at all yet for folks who are in emergency shelter and our families to be able to move to the landing place at this time now?
So that is something that's still in process and is going to be part of the next meeting contract update for you.
When does that occur?
The 16th.
Okay, good, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Just a point of order, since our public can't see, can you read the funding amount so that it's transparent?
Absolutely.
As you go
So
through.
we received 11 million in operations over 3 years for the landing place, as well as 700,000 for a construction gap project. Thank you.
The next item we want to talk about, did someone have a question? Oh, it's up, is the shelter access coordination and diversion. We were funded $2.5 million over 3 years.
So right now we are working under a short-term contract with HRI that was really meant to get us from when the winter solutions project ended into, a longer-term contract that is not just going to be funding HRI, but additional partner organizations that are doing some of this work as well. So the contract is extended through July 31st with HRI. It took a little bit longer to refine the process with Family Promise, and so now we're working on outreach with other organizations. The short-term contract funding was approximately $87,000. So far, some key accomplishments that have come out of that are having 24-hour staff available to answer phones and do assessments. And they have worked through the 300 plus household waiting list of families and are actively working to sort through the by name list for individuals that are also waiting for housing solutions to make sure that we have an updated and accurate list. We are also currently working with HRI to develop a long-term contract. This will include input from other providers in the community. We plan to have a contract for you at it was the 21st meeting on regular business. We can go through that with you all as well.
Next.
So the next initiative that was funded is the strategic and implementation plan. We received $300,000 for this plan. We had an open RFP process that opened in April 2026. We received 4 submissions. Our evaluation committee is actively reviewing those submissions. We got some really strong ones, and our goal is to have a contract come forward before the board for that in August.
Who is serving on the evaluations? Committee?
Me, Lindy, Mary, and my Brandon, Neon. It's the housing department is working with administration to go through the submissions.
Thank you.
Next.
So the next initiative that was funded is administrative capacity and support. So with all of the new projects that we are undertaking as a housing department, increased capacity was.
Sorry, I just had a thought on the prior item I don't want to forget just to mention is the evaluation is committing. The evaluation committee is reviewing the RFP proposals that have come in. Again, I want to lift up the need to seek significant feedback from the population who are unhoused in the community. And I hope that the proposals will be weighted on what their approach is to address that and to garner the feedback from the folks really needing the services. Okay, thank you. And I apologize for interrupting.
So with the additional projects that we are undertaking as a department, additional staff's capacity is necessary. So this money is going to be used to fund primarily 3 positions over the next 3 years. The first is our system and data integration specialist. That person just started yesterday, and so I'll be introducing them to you at the next meeting. We're really excited to have somebody who, can get into the weeds of IT and data systems in a way that that's not necessarily our expertise in the housing department. We also have a voucher program specialist, and that position was filled in May 2026. You met Brandon Neon a couple meetings ago. So we are also going to be contracting with Lockhart Consulting to work on developing all the forms that go along with the program once we have an outline developed.
Vice Chair.
Question on the voucher program. I know that we're doing 2 kind of tiered and one's going to take a lot longer than the other. But are we working specifically in the exterior portion of the voucher program? Are we working at all with Macy and the Brownfield folks on as we set rules or sort of things for brownfields for housing on how maybe that voucher program can tie into that, or is that a possibility?
There will definitely be input with them, and we have a slide coming up on that for you too. So the additional position that is going to be filled through that administrative capacity is a supportive housing division manager that's really going to help oversee all of these initiatives for us, and we expect to get that posted and filled by Q4 of 2026. Next slide. Next, we have our data integration system. And so the funding that we received for this is $600,000. The key position for this is that data and system integration specialist. So now that we have that person on board, I'm really excited to be able to start diving into this initiative. Right now, the initial focus on that program is going to be doing a lot of research and outreach with community partners about what their data needs are, where their gaps are, what sort of systems they are using, the strengths and weaknesses of those. And we plan to work closely with the strategic and implementation consultant to figure out how we can best identify the data that we're trying to measure our success with and make sure that that is captured within whatever systems we are able to develop. And then we also continue to work with the COC, our regional housing partnership, and the statewide entities on the current HMIS system that is used for unhoused individuals and shelter access, so that we can make sure that whatever system we develop is not requiring users to do additional data entry and duplicate what they're already working on.
I'll just recognize Commissioner Wheeler has joined the meeting at 4:14 for the minutes. And on this, I just also am excited to hear how there's potential exploration for cross-sector data collaboration. So when we're thinking about work like Kalamazoo and John has done, and ultimately what I hope will be criminal justice data that will have sort of how we merge all of these data sets so we get a visualization of what's happening over time and the impact that policy directives are having across sectors. So I just encourage you all to think through how to merge that broadly as we develop this out. Vice Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you. That's kind of what my question was. Is this going to be able to merge all the data that would be pertinent to helping us get these folks taken care of?
That is a great question. I think that there are systems in place that do allow us to merge different data sets. And so we are in conversations. We just had a meeting with, some of our health department folks around the data that they're gathering and how we can make sure that we are able to overlay certain things and make sure that our outcomes are all, we're looking at the same types of outcomes and with our different inputs, for lack of a better word.
Commissioner Gisela.
Thank you, Chair. Have you filled that spot? You have, haven't you?
Yes, they
You
started
didn't mention
yesterday.
anybody's name.
So the person is Eric Oliphant, and I will introduce him at the next meeting because I forgot to tell him to come to the board line today. So.
Thank you.
Next slide. Okay, so next we have our county voucher pilot. We received $7.2 million for this. Our voucher program specialist started in the beginning of June. So is fairly fresh to that position as well. But right now they're working on a lot of, again, research and outreach. So for communities that have developed some type of a, privately funded voucher or locally funded voucher program, what are some of the successes that they've seen there? What are some things that we can improve upon? They have put out a survey to area landlords at this point, landlords, developers, property management firms, to see what some of the barriers that they have encountered working with the vouchers that we do have available in the county. And then we are also going to be doing outreach with folks who are using vouchers and organizations that help people get into housing with those resources. As Vice Chair mentioned, we are sort of targeting 2 pilot programs. So the first is going to be project-based vouchers that will be utilized on developments that have been funded through the housing village already. We already have relationships with those folks. We're doing compliance on those projects, and we, it feels like a really great way to pilot this. But there will obviously be opportunities for expanding the program, or we hope. The second pilot will be tenant-based vouchers, so more of those flexible, they come with the person and they're able to choose their unit. That is very complex and is going to take some more time to develop, but so we are looking to have that going hopefully by the end of next year. We are still targeting an end of 2026 start date for our project-based vouchers.
Commissioner Gisela's question.
Yes, I'm asking for a name. Who is this voucher specialist?
Brandon Mion. So he
Okay.
I brought him to the last meeting, I believe. They're all running together, but we're
Running
so
with you or from you?
who knows?
Cheap shots.
Who knows? We also are really hoping to put together a landlord, property manager, developer engagement session sometime in October, so we can make sure that we have a lot of folks who are interested in taking vouchers. We know that one of the barriers of previous voucher programs is that it seems like it's a lot of extra paperwork, a lot of extra inspections. And so even though they are required under law to take them, there are, people are hesitant around to do so. And so we want to make sure that we have lots of people who are lining up to take vouchers and folks who need the housing with this tool.
Do you have a sense of what the division in resources will be between project-based and tenant-based vouchers of the pot of money that we have awarded? Do you have a specific amount that you're targeting for project-based vouchers in this first award cycle?
No, we do not. But we'll come forward with more information on this in future meetings when we have some more time to develop the plan.
Maybe Housing Ad Hoc could have some discussion and get dig in a little deeper into that. Thank you.
We can put that on the August agenda, Chair.
Next slide. And so now that we have gone through these were the funded initiatives under the Keys to Kalamazoo, but of course, the housing department is working on lots of other things. So we just wanted to highlight briefly some of the other top priorities for our department. Our 2026 millage funding portal, we anticipated opening the funding portal for applications in late September. The funding availability, the priorities, and the funding buckets by category are going to be discussed with the ad hoc committee at the next meeting in August. And then we will bring that forward for full board approval before we open up that portal. We also are working on winter solutions for 2026, 2027. So as you all know, last year was the first year where we had a sort of collaborative effort with the city of Kalamazoo and the Continuum of Care to fund emergency shelter solutions for the winter months. And so I know that Deputy Administrator Smith is going to be discussing that right after us. So I won't go into that with too much detail, just know that that's coming again. And then also our health and housing collaboration that came to fruition out of the proclamation in December that made housing a public health crisis. So we are meeting monthly with the health department. We are currently doing analysis of available data that we have, what is missing. And we are investigating ways to optimize existing and underutilized programs. So we actually just came from a meeting with a lot of our nonprofit providers that do critical home repair work is an example of this. And, you know, how do we maximize access to outside funding resources that aren't necessarily counties, so we are leveraging all of the dollars that we have here. And then figuring out what are things that have been barriers for these organizations, what are things that aren't able to be funded through other resources so that we can, you know, be as efficient with our dollars as possible.
Chair, that's our presentation. We are open for questions or comments.
Thank you so much. Do you have any additional questions? Vice Chair.
Just great work. We are a model throughout the state with what we're able to do, not just because of our funding dollars and our funding knowledge, but because of the creative solutions that you two have continuously brought forward to this board. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the board for putting us in Kalamazoo County as a leader in the state when it comes to creative housing solutions.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo that sentiment. We appreciate all that you've done to make our housing dollars go way beyond what the millage has provided and provide our most needy housing and keeping our community a great place to live, work, and play.
That's 1 point for Vice Chair Pro Tem. Okay, Commissioner. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned more than a few additional employees. Are you just about hired up? Or have you
Yes.
got more to go?
One more.
How many FTEs is that going to be when you're finished?
So we'll have 6 total in our department.
Thank you. I appreciate the raise. Makes it easy for us old guys. Thank you.
And of those 6, 3 are funded through the housing millage. The other 3 are funded through the Keys to Kalamazoo fund.
Excellent. Exciting to watch us continue to gain steam and the collaboration we're building across the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move to our fifth agenda item, which is a discussion on 2026 funding for winter solutions. And we'll bring that to Deputy County Administrator Linus.
Good afternoon. So tonight I'm just bringing forward a discussion item for us to start considering and really get feedback from the board on what direction you would like us to have here. We're looking at the 2026-27 winter solutions funding. And if that is something that the board wishes to collaborate again with the city of Kalamazoo by pulling resources through the United Way of South Central Michigan / Continuum of Care to support those winter solutions in an upcoming RFP. In the packet, I included the background of what occurred last year, the decisions that were made, the funding that was allocated. So $396,750 was allocated to the COC to administer winter solutions, and that was ARPA funding. Additionally, the county moved forward a little bit later on in December and allocated another $100,000 directly to Hope Through Navigation to expand current services as well for winter solutions. So in total, last year, the county contributed $496,750, both from ARPA and the housing village. As we look and are preparing, we've been having conversations with the city of Kalamazoo and the COC and preparing for this upcoming winter season. I know that seems strange to maybe to be talking about that and the current weather that we're having, but really now is the time for us to consider that conversation. So just as a reminder as well, Winter Solutions is intended to supplement the community's year-round emergency shelter system by expanding capacity during periods of increased seasonal demand. A coordinated funding approach with the city of Kalamazoo, which was our first time to do that last year, leveraged local resources, streamlined the funding process for several service providers, and promoted a more comprehensive community response to homelessness during the winter months. Tonight, what we're looking for, as indicated in the brief, there's kind of 4 items here. We're looking for direction, whether the county should participate in the 26-27 Winter Solutions Initiative in partnership with the city of Kalamazoo and the COC, the amount of funding. If the county chooses to participate, what is the amount of county funding to be committed? The preferred funding source for the county's contribution, and then to be contemplating as well whether the county should include funding in the fiscal year 27 budget process, or if the preference is to have the request evaluated annually outside of the budget process in a discussion like this. Really tonight, what we're looking for is to hold these initial discussions. We're not looking for necessarily a decision to be made tonight. We would ask that a decision be made by the next board meeting, because if we are going to stay ahead of the winter season, we do know that the COC would like to issue that RFP sooner rather than later. So with that, I'll just pause and hold for any questions.
Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. And first off, I appreciate the timing of this. I believe last year we were having this conversation in December. And it was, what do we do for winter solutions? So the timing of this is much better. I'd like to take this board back to the previous December when we discussed this emergency funding for shelter. It was because the Family Promise, or the landing place, had not been open yet, and it was anticipated to be open yet. So we put together with the city of Kalamazoo and Continuing Care a source of dollars to be used for emergency funding shelter. If this is ongoing and operational, it's no longer emergency, it's part of a planning process. And it gets to Commissioner Gisler's thing of priorities. We don't have the ARPA dollars anymore to do this. That being said, I am always committed to partnerships with other governmental entities in the city of Kalamazoo, Community Care, United Way, when we can pool our resources together and have more effective. But I personally will not be in favor, since we do have the landing place up and running and operational, 48 families are there, at least not at the same level that we were last year. That's my personal preference. If we do as a board decide to do this as an ongoing basis, I think it should be part of our budget year after year, and not external requests that comes before the board under the auspices of emergency. When it's now, it becomes an operational sort of thing when it's done year after year. So my comments are, I have no problem partnering with the city of Kalamazoo Care. I do not believe we can afford a $500,000 a year appropriation on top of what we're already spending for emergency solutions. I think we need to scale that back.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm in agreement with Vice Chair with a budget. I can't remember do you remember what their count was in January? Anybody? My brain's Commissioner Ray? No.
So we are at, we've received the initial report, from the continuum of care, which was for the first month, which was for the month of December. We have received preliminary reports from them. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, and I know that they're in the process of this week finalizing their final report. Similarly, Hope Through Navigation, they did provide, monthly reports February. They started operationally in January. They provided a report February and March, and we should be getting their final report shortly as well.
So I'm asking that is more than 100 folks, right? In that count, and that, I can't, was it a
Yes,
CIP
yes.
count or something? The PIC count, so, yeah, I'm asking about both because we talked about continuum of care and the funding. And so if we have landing place, then we have, what, 100 rooms there? 77 that can serve, I mean, so we're still gonna have a big gap with folks who don't have housing for the winter. So I think this is a need. I mean, I don't like the last minute requests and just housing people for, 2 weeks and then they're back in the regular cold. So I'm with the budget. I don't like the last minute things, but I don't think this is something that we can etch off based on, I can't remember what that PIC count was back in January, but I know it's more than 77 times 2 or 3 to be able to. And we got single folks out there too. We have students out there that we need to take into consideration.
Deputy Administrator.
I just want to provide a response. So I believe what we'd be looking forward to with the continuum of care is looking at our singles in particular. So this is correct that the landing place is now operational. We did hear, the number of families we're able to serve. Additionally, the other funding that was provided through the COC last year was for medical respite, and the board has decided to allocate funding for medical respite as well. And so the concentration really is on our singles and what type of resources that they still need and what are the gaps we have in the community for those. I can't say that's going to be the final thing that comes out in the RFP, but that is one area that we know has not been identified, I guess, within the last year.
Commissioner DeLuca.
Just a funding question, because we're talking about housing people in the winter. This qualify in any way, the housing millage dollars? Of course, I'm sure Director Balkova doesn't want to hear that. I mean, the housing millage is supported by every person in Kalamazoo County, so that might be a good source for this.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLu. And I agree. I think the housing millage is an important component. Just, to elevate a couple of other considerations for the board. So we know there is an increased need in shelter capacity during the winter. But there are specific points of really acute distress that occur during the wintertime when we hit like the vortex sort of behavior. We have some specialty populations within our unhoused population. And families being one of them. We've addressed that meaningfully through the landing place. But as Deputy Administrator is lifting singles as one, I'll drill into that a little bit further. And there we have some folks who are like chronically unhoused. These are folks that have been in unsheltered, exposed to elements for, more than a year. And these folks are often struggling with very complex layers of issues. There may be significant substance abuse concerns. There may be intractable and severe mental health issues. And it makes it challenging for some of those folks to accept and be able to go into congregate shelter. So you just try to empathize with being a person with, severe and uncontrolled schizophrenia, for example, and then laying on a cot on the floor with 60 other people. You can't really tolerate the stimulation of an environment like that. And so you may seek to escape that environment and be outside, where then you are exposed to freezing to death, right? And there's points in the winter where that becomes like nearly assured that people will die outside. So I think there's two components we need to consider, maybe, as I think through that, housing millage funds that we maybe talk through as a board, or we make a recommendation at the Housing Ad Hoc Committee that becomes sort of a routine component of shelter capacity increase during the winters. And then maybe either through strategic initiatives or another pot of funding that is, we designate a amount of that for emergency response, for acute life-threatening conditions, because what often works there is an expensive but short-term option is like the hoteling has worked well for these very difficult to serve people, because they'll go into shelter when they can have some space, but not when they can't. So those are things that I would encourage the board to keep in mind. Vice Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I kind of go back to your Vice Chair's comments and what we've all recognized. There are no ARPA funds anymore. We're done. Funding the level that we were able to do last year, we're not going to be able to do this year. I guess my question is going to be, Commissioner Luke brought up housing millage, but is that the place we want to go for that money? Should this be a part of our budget? Should it be a specific line item in our budget? And I think those are things that I'm glad they're bringing it up at this point in time. Thank you, Deputy Smith, for bringing this forward now. We should plan these things in advance. We shouldn't wait till December and, oh gee, it's cold outside. Yeah, it's cold every winter. It's Michigan. And how that will impact our budget for not just this year, but for next year. Particularly next year, because most of that January, February, March are in our next year's budget. So I guess I think this is something we need to discuss and come up with an answer as to how much do we need and where we're getting it from.
Deputy Administrator, in discussions that have occurred thus far with the city of Kalamazoo, have they suggested or have a sense of what their level of support may be for winter solutions?
Yes, so I don't have the dollar amount in front of me, but they do allocate funding every year in their budget cycle. And I believe the last number I heard was somewhere kind of just right south of 500,000 remaining. And so it's somewhere between probably 450, 500, somewhere in there that I believe that they still have available. I don't know if they have indicated how much they're going to be given to Winter Solutions, but I do know that they budget annually for this. I think if I could expand upon just some other thoughts to consider, there is an opportunity to look at what, if there's funding that we can identify, what maybe have it be up to, right? So if you're landing on 400,000 or whatever that number may be, it can just be up to, and then in those discussions, we can kind of shuffle out what makes sense. I think as far as like when you're looking at funding sources, some options that could be available, we talked about, y'all have already programmed funding for community grants for the fiscal year 27, but already. And so if y'all wanted to make a shift and say, maybe we don't do community grants, but we would like to make this our primary community initiative, that could be an option. I think another option that you could have is looking at, I almost forgot for a moment, looking at our board priorities. So through the golden ratio, there's 30% of anything that kind of comes back. There's 30% there that's for board priorities. And so you'll utilize some of that funding to determine what you would like to allocate for Winter Solutions this year. And then of course, we can always look at in the budget process how y'all would like us to proceed there too. So there are, depending on the dollar amount, I think that you have several options in front of you of what budget that could potentially come from.
Thank you, Deputy Administrator. Anything further? I'm not trying to make you if you don't have anything.
Like you're making.
Your input's welcome.
I guess I agree with a lot of what's already been said. The comments of Vice Chair Taylor are really on point. I don't think that this becomes an emergency situation, but it is necessary. I think we won't also have to try to house families. And then we also just put funding towards the medically fragile people, which is also where a significant portion of that money went last year. I think 228,000 went for that and 100,000 for family shelter. So we're just looking at individuals, which I think is a lot less, but still not enough. Also, the continuum of care was supposed to kick in. Maybe we can talk to them about doing more than 15,000 or whatever that little bit was, but I do think that it's necessary for us to do this. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner Ray just elaborated better than I did on the points I had with that, the fractures of money from the previous year, that 498,000. Some was going towards families, some was going towards, respite, some was going towards individuals. We've covered two of those three categories by having the landing place open for families and already improving the respite. So we're talking about the singles, the issue, which would be much lower than 500,000. That also, if there could be any discussions, even if it's just a token amount or a small amount from some of the other jurisdictions, whether it be the city of Portage, Oshtemo, if they could even put in a token amount of money just to be a part of this process, I think it would go a long way towards building that intergovernmental cooperation piece that we're going to need in so many other factors that we're.
Right, so we've had an initial discussion. Are you hoping for more clear direction at this time, or we bring it up for further discussion after some more intergovernmental information is gathered? What do you need from us?
Yeah, so I think I think I have enough information too. So kind of next steps would be, we'll bring this forward at the next board meeting. It sounds like there is desire to collaborate again. And I think what would be helpful to know if there's a dollar amount or if that's in the next session, y'all want to fine tune that. That's really what's going to be helpful for us to know kind of then what funding source to look at and identify. Which again, that can be part of the discussion next time if y'all would like that time, and we'll just write the brief to indicate that for further discussion. I will say would prefer for a decision to be made by the next board meeting. So that way we can just stay on schedule, slightly ahead, but not really on schedule for releasing that RFP ahead of winter.
Do we have any strong views about setting a threshold of funding level at this time, or we want to, I mean, we can always move down from that, but a $400,000 maximum allocation, we want to go lower than that. Commissioner Morales? Vice Chair?
Yeah, I think with what we put towards emergency respite, I think Commissioner Ray had the numbers pretty darn close. Emergency respite, what we did towards family planning, that leaves about $140,000 in supplemental that we went towards singles. That number, and I hate to throw right numbers around in the public like that before you have conversation with the city, but in real, I would like those numbers to match what we were doing for the single portion of last year. And I don't think it should come out from community grants, perhaps the golden ratio, but the community grants one, I would be leaning towards opposed towards doing that, as there's so many other intergovernmental jurisdictional sort of projects that are coming down the pipe, from the airport study to corridor study to lots of different things that I think that townships and villages are looking towards to apply towards. So I would prefer it come from the golden ratio or the housing village or a combination of both. But I think that number around 150 is my personal preference.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just to know, thinking about what we allocated for singles, whether that was sufficient to meet the need or not. I don't think the need was met. We had a lot of community-based organizations still seeking their own fundraising and sheltering people outside of our support, which I'm sure they will endeavor to do again. But if we have an opportunity to have a more collaborative and strategic sort of approach, maybe $200,000 is a comfort level for commissioners, Commissioner Morales.
Just being that I work with a lot of single folks and student populations, I was going more towards 250, maybe 3, just because, you know, our focus was on families, which most of the focus around the state is around families. So I would propose no more than 300, just because I know there's a significant gap. And I've been in conversation, we've been in conversation of how we can, better assist, you know, so that they can finish their degrees and, you know, be employable in the near future. So that would be my recommendation.
Do we have opposition to that? Can we earn our consensus for direction for administration? We'll have further discussion and votes, to solidify proposals, but Vice Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. I have trouble going there without having more information. I'm leaning more towards the 2 part of that. Like I said, we've got $11 million landing place that the county is funding. Yes, we have some support. We got a FOP grant person to help us fund the whole thing, but are part of it, and the great work of our housing department. But now I have more information. I'm thinking we're going way too far without a place to find out where it's coming from first and what other programs we're going to have to jockey to make this work.
Well, Commissioner Ray, Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. I would say I agree with that. Maybe around 200,000. It was about 421,000 to house folks at Ministry of Community. And maybe we connect with them and see what's necessary, because they did all of the work as it relates to the single people. And I know it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough space. Can we just have more conversations about what that looks like? Is it a bigger space? How much is necessary? And then I guess my question would be, do we also have to do the RFP through the continuum of care? I personally did not like that process, and how projects got changed and funding went different places, and the final grant report, in my opinion, is not sufficient, and just wondered if we have to use the
Deputy Administrator, do you want to address those questions from Commissioner Ray? Or, we certainly don't have to use the continuum of care. We can internally seek contracts. If there's pros and cons, I think we hoped to go through the COC for efficiency last time, and I don't know necessarily it got us much efficiency, but maybe there's some things we've learned from that process. So, Deputy Administrator, do you have insight you'd like to add?
Yes, so, last year, there was definitely a lot that we've learned, and we've continued to have those conversations with the COC and with this city of Kalamazoo. I would say the biggest benefit we have with going through the COC, again, it's just the ability to pull those resources. And with the hope to release that RFP by really, I think they're aiming for the beginning of August if we can. So I think if we were to shift gears, we would just need to kind of think that through a little bit more and have more conversations with both, honestly, the COC and the city of Kalamazoo. The biggest benefit, like I said, is being able to pull those resources, and if changing that, that might be a little difficult. However, we have talked in length in meetings about what our lessons learned and things that we'd like to see differently. And I think in the contracting process, if it's desired for us to go through the COC and the contracting process, if there's anything that we want to address, some efficiencies or gaps to overcome, I think that we could address that maybe in the contracting process and give it another year and see if there are improvements. There are real benefits with the COC, with them being so intimately tied to the service providers. But like I said, we all know that we learned a lot last year and had challenges in many ways with it being our first year of pulling those resources.
I think the struggle may be too, if the funding we can come forward with is only part of what a provider would need, to have to contract with us and with the city, or contract with us and with the COC becomes complex for them. But maybe we can improve reporting requirements or outcomes that we're getting reported back, or whatever else through the way we craft the contract. That's something we can consider. Commissioner Ray.
Okay, and then just one follow-up question. we also utilize HRI for the coordinated care. Do we need to allocate additional funding for that, or will we be able to just kind of use the system that we already have in place with the contract that we already have in place with them for coordinated care?
Deputy Administrator.
Yes, that would be the intent. So, and you were absolutely correct, but in reading the number that went to ministry last year. Additionally, last year, some of that funding did go to that coordinated entry. The intent this year would be that that wouldn't be necessary because of the contract that we have with HRI, and one that y'all are going to be looking at for that longer term as well for the coordinated entry.
All right, so I don't think we have a set clear consensus on the amount, certainly somewhere around $200,000. We can have additional discussion, solidify that more firmly after some more intergovernmental information is brought back with a board prepared to deliberate, make a decision at our next meeting. So, well, good, thank you. Okay. Right, I'll take us next to item 6. This is a gun violence prevention field of interest request. And here, this comes from work of the Gun Violence Prevention Ad Hoc Committee. Commissioner Ray is our chair of that body. Commissioner Ray, would you like to? You don't have to. Yeah, yeah. You know, I respect you as chair, but we can talk through. So Administrator Catlin last time mentioned, so we elevated the concept. We have allocation for gun violence within the budget and how to really maximize the impact of that through a field of interest fund with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. This becomes a fund that perpetuates going forwards, making the broadest impact possible. And then it also allows other funders or donors to come forward and support the fund. And we could sort of set a framework about the things that we're hoping to accomplish here. Pardon me. I will, so this is to negotiate an agreement with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation as to form. The future use is approximately $200,000 of remaining ARPA funds identified for gun violence prevention activities. And then this would be able to provide direct grant awards to existing organizations that are engaged in violence prevention and intervention activities, without us having to dig into the contracting and bureaucratic process to let this sort of move more fluidly and responsively. Commissioner Ray, do you have other things that you'd like to add to that?
I think you did a great job of covering it. I think in our last meeting, Kevin kind of broke down a couple of different options for us to choose from, as far as the different types of funds that not it or not the way the Community Foundation offers. I'm trying to find it. Maybe that's something that one of the deputy administrators go over. So talk to those and select one.
Deputy Administrator Cole or Smith, one of you like to? Thank you.
She said to leave her mic alone. Administrator Catlin left just a few notes for us on this one, is to just review the recommendation of the subcommittee and really discuss the structure of the proposed fund. Consider whether an advisory committee model would be incorporated into the agreement, the eligible uses and potential beneficiary organizations, and some policy direction regarding the long-term administration and governance of the fund. Let's see, there is also another component to this. So in discussions with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, representatives have recommended that the fund be established as a field of interest fund dedicated to supporting nonprofit organizations that provide services throughout the county to individuals and families impacted by gun violence. Suggested purpose language for the fund includes support for organizations engaged in violence prevention, victim support, crisis response, youth engagement, restorative practices, trauma-informed services, and related community-based programming. Examples of organizations that may align with the intended purpose would include, but not limited to, Griffin Place, Urban Alliance, Integrated Services of Kalamazoo, ISK, Moms Demand Action, and others similarly situated nonprofit organizations. The specific beneficiaries of future grant-making decisions would remain subject to the governance structure established through the final agreement and approval authorization of the Kalamazoo Community Foundation Board of Trustees. So it would be part of that stipulation establishing of the fund. And working with the foundation for those priorities. Should the board want to add additional funds, this would be used for this particular purpose and type the general guidance from Dr. Catlin.
So of the options, that field of interest fund, I think, offers us the most sort of ability to be specific on direction and to help ensure sort of we're targeting what we're hoping to connect with going forward. Vice Chair.
Thank you. The motion in our packet, and correct me if I'm wrong, dictates the 200,000 that we've already allocated in ARPA to go towards this, correct? And so what fund we create would be up to us after we pass this motion, or do we have to decide on this fund now before our first reading? I guess that'd probably be a Lou question. Do we need to decide on whether it's a field of interest fund or whether it's a community grants fund or whatever does that need to be decided now before we allocate the 200,000? Or can we just allocate the 200,000 without? And then when it comes down to our final agreement, that's where we dictate what type of fund what kind of fund. Yes, that would be a Lou question, I'm assuming.
Deputy Administrator.
I just want to elevate too, in case there's any questions regarding the type of funding. I believe Alyssa Stewart is in the audience if y'all want to specifically ask any questions.
Commissioner Ray.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't see the three different in this packet. Maybe it's not. I can look it up in the last meeting on where it was broke down. But my question of the field of interest fund, is that the one where individuals or organizations can apply to it, or is this specific?
Alyssa, do you mind joining us?
Then I got an email that says people can't hear, so we can speak up.
Okay.
I'm not that loud, so this is the best I can do.
Yes, please. Welcome.
I actually have my colleague here with me, Joanna Donnelly-Dales, who's actually the expert on the donor advised fund side. But yes, a donor advised fund, a field of interest fund specifically would have very clear purpose defined by you all as the creators and founders of the fund that KCCF would then be charged with carrying out on an ongoing basis. We have many, many field of interest funds with all kinds of specific and broad uses. Currently, the way we manage that is through our multiple processes per year. Requests can come in, and then on the back end, we match requests we receive with field of interest funds that align with those uses. So we have 2 grant processes per year. Organizations doing work aligned with the direction given by the county would apply to those processes, and we could provide those funds on the back end. A question or option which was discussed with Dr. Catlin was also if the fund is opportunity, which it would be if 200,000 is allocated, there could be discussion around having an advisory committee of sorts that would allow county stakeholders or commissioners or other folks to sort of provide input. So it could be hands-on or hands-off, depending on how it is set up on the front end of the creation of the field of interest fund. Is there anything I missed? Okay.
Do you want to provide some insight too on the donor directed fund?
Yeah, so Joanna can speak to the donor advised fund option, which was initially discussed.
Sure. A donor advised fund is different in that you don't have to set out what the parameters around the specific area is. in this case, you have a very clear focus on what you want these dollars to be used for. So a donor advised fund is more for something if an individual or a family or a company wanted to support a variety of organizations, a variety of issues that would give them full access to that kind of thing without having to set aside gun violence prevention or housing or something like that.
So essentially, a donor advised fund would be a account that the funds will be put into, and the county, a designated folks from the county would have access to our donor portal and would actually be able to go into that donor portal and make grants from your account. So that control would be more, really, the county would be the donor, and you would be the ones initiating that and making the grants based on whatever perimeters you determine. So it would really just be the account, and the mechanism would be held at the community foundation.
And those parameters could then be changed. The first fund we would set initially at its outset, its purpose is for gun violence intervention and prevention, or however we define it, and that would be set into perpetuity, right?
Correct.
Whereas a donor directed fund, as board priorities change, the money that we initially set out for that could be redirected to another purpose in a future time. So I think that's an important consideration for the board. I think the intention of the committee is to see these funds invested for gun violence intervention and prevention, and it'd be the establishment of a fund that works on that, into perpetuity. I think it's exciting from my perspective, with the investment of over 100,000, 200 is what we have left in ARPA funding here, that we develop an advisory committee to help inform and bring in either voices from the board level or voices from the board level, or et cetera. I think that would be a wise move for us. Vice Chair.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think the reason that, to get a donor advised fund, I don't see no offense to our friends at the Community Foundation, but why would we give money out to pay a percentage of interest to them when we could just do it ourselves? Now, that being said, this is ARPA dollars that we have to expend immediately. So I'm in support of a field of interest fund with an advisory group made up of commissioners and or administration to help dictate this $200,000 as it becomes probably necessary to continue funding in this. I think we need to strongly look at what we can do internally and what we need to do and collaborate and do externally. And there's probably a percentage to do both ways. But I think at this point in time, we need to get those ARPA dollars out the door. I think we need to create a field of interest fund and put some sort of commissioner and or administrative representation on that directive. That was the kind of the question I had for corporate counsel. Do we have to make in this first reading of this motion of what type of fund we use, or can that be done after we allocate the $200,000? Because based on this motion, I think it's just an allocation, correct?
Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being that the first reading is to get the public knowledge of what is happening. And oftentimes there are amendments and changes made, which is why it's the first reading, so that you can make those in your second reading and the process of adoption.
Yeah, and this tonight is really just a discussion item. It is not a first reading or a written resolution as of yet. So we're just providing sort of the input on the direction of sort of the two, main pathways that we can go, and sort of help administration then begin to solidify what the framework looks like. That'll come back to us for a first reading and then final adoption. Is that, okay, it's listed this other way in my packet, so my apologies. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ray.
I just have one follow-up question while we have a listener here. So a member of the community asked if they can make contributions to this fund once we create it. Is that a possibility, or does the funding only come from the county?
Anyone can contribute to the fund. Yeah, and it will be on our website, and we can do a story on it and, put it up to community so everyone can buy into it.
See, my apologies. We're in the discussion item and we'll come to the first reading. Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time in discussion? We appreciate your participation. Thank you for our answers. Thank you so much. All right. Good. All right, now we'll go to other items. Number 7, our first is a first reading. Request for approval of resolution approving an amendment. Skipped here. For the county emergency management resolution. So in part, this just moves the authority from the administrator controller to the director of emergency management effective August 4th, which is the time that Dr. Kitland leaves our employ to Virginia. Is there any questions? Okay. All right. Vice Chair, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ray.
So I don't have a question. I did get an email, however, we all got one that says, seems like the speakers are turned down and folks can't hear us. I can't really talk louder, but if folks can talk louder, pretend like they're yelling at doors. Yelling at.
I'm not sure too if each of our, we have a volume control on our desk.
Can you hear me?
Maybe turn those up. If that makes a difference.
Yeah.
That looks like that's helping. Good.
So turn your volume off.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray, for bringing that forward. All right. So nothing further on that item. Commissioners will extend our volume. Let's go to our next. First reading for request for approval for a resolution accepting recommendation of the Gun Violence Prevention Ad Hoc Committee. Sorry, I just, thank you, Commissioner Ray. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have a question for this one because there's 2 different first readings. One is the resolution authorizing negotiation of the field of interest fund agreement. There were other recommendations that came out of the committee that we haven't discussed. Is this where we discuss it?
I believe that item comes to non-consent on the regular agenda, the other $90,000 allocation that we discussed. Nothing further, so we'll go to the next is a first reading. Request for approval of a resolution authorizing negotiation and execution of gun violence prevention and intervention field of interest fund. And anything further on that? We had our discussion. That's the first reading for the resolution that endeavors to create it. All right. And then our last item is request for a resolution in support of an additional 9th Circuit Court Judge and 8th District Court Judge. And we have representatives from our state delegation here, Representative Julie Rogers from District 41 and members of our court administration. So what we have is Representative Rogers has been advocating at the state level. SCAO has identified that we're in need of additional judge within the court system to handle both size of population and caseloads. And it's before the board to consider supporting that would help bolster the potential of its success through the negotiation process at the state level. But it has significant implications at the county level as far as cost, accommodation of the judgeship. Those are all considerations that we need to weigh out within our discussion. I'd welcome forward, Representative Rogers, would you like to speak to the commission? Welcome to you. Thank you for taking the time to be here, for your advocacy for the county. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Great stuff you're discussing tonight. I'm glad I could catch up. So there's a pretty thorough process that the state goes through the state court administrator SCAO in calculating what their recommendations are for judgeships. And it's not always the case that they recommend going up. Sometimes they recommend going down. They did do a calculation in the latest data for Kalamazoo County. I do want to show the population growth. So in 2010, we had 250,331 residents. In 2020, the census showed 261,000, so roughly 11,000 uptick. And then 2024 is the last estimate which is another uptick of 264,780 residents. When SCAO estimates the average workload per judge, they take into account the number of residents in the county and then the number of crimes being committed and charged. And so their estimate is that the average workload per judge is 119%. So that is above a regular caseload, and that is partly why they are recommending 2 new judges for Kalamazoo County, as you outlined, 1 in 9th Circuit Court and 1 in 8th Circuit Court. Right now, we have a total of 15 judges in Kalamazoo County. We have 6 in 9th Circuit, we have 6 in 8th Circuit, and we have 3 probate. My bill is House Bill 5870 because you do need to do legislation to increase judges in different counties, and what then gets negotiated. So you've got the policy, I've got the policy bill for this that is necessary to pass. Then also in budget negotiations, that would have to happen at the state level so that the state would pay for said judge, but then the county picks up the piece for fringe. Obviously, you have space considerations too that I know you've had a lot of discussions over the years, but this has been referred to the Judiciary Committee. I had preliminary discussions with Administrator Catlin, Chief Judge Jaguar, as well as your board leadership about this. And I think you've had some discussion earlier this year on this as well. But in speaking with the Judiciary House Chair Leitner, it is her preference and desire that each county considering this pass a formal resolution. And that is why we are before you today.
Thank you for that. And for commissioners, we'll receive support for the judicial salary, but fringes are a responsibility, and then also are the support, the ancillary staff to support the judge, the processing of the paperwork, the administration, and then also where we accommodate the 2 judgeships, they need a courtroom. And that's an investment as well. Are there questions for Commissioner or Representative Rogers? Commissioner Duluth?
I know Vice Chair Taylor's pessimism about how long this would take. And I also want to point out to the board, I think the study we initially got, they actually recommended 2.7 judges, so it was almost 3, and we're only asking for 2. But how long of a process, like say, all right, you're going to get another judge, how many years away? Talk.
Well, the judges didn't want to put a 3/4 or split anyone in half. So that's why we just decided to go with the 2. But as you know, the legislative process, it is not always quick and easy. And so we shall see. We are only with 6 months left in this year. So we shall see if this is taken up by the Judiciary Committee in the House. But I will say that I'm still optimistic, because in the budget negotiations that we were there all night for on Thursday, we had roughly 60 bills tagged on as well with the budget, and there was a judiciary bill for a judgeship in Oakland County that passed with wide bipartisan support. So this bill could still pass this year, but it does not have necessarily the dollar amount that it has to be negotiated in the budget. So it might be a couple-year process before this would actually be ready for you all. But we want to try to tee it up to the best. I'm doing my part to advocate. SCAO is saying, and I'm hearing from the judges, that their caseloads are high. So the legislative process is sometimes long. So we're trying to do the first steps to prepare you should you decide to take advantage of this.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, the reason, Commissioner DeLue, for my pessimism is I spent 14 years on the county commission previous to this, and every single year they recommended additional judges. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years after my commission that I think it was Senator Nesbitt and Senator McCann cut a deal and got a judgeship for us in Allocation County. It took a long time, and I know that Senator McCann's staff worked really, really hard on that. That being said, I think
when you look at what the cost of a judge is for the state compared to the county, the state pays a minuscule amount. The salary for a judge is nothing compared to all the support staff, the construction costs, the building of a courtroom, all the fringe, all those other things. I hate to venture a guess, but well under 50% is what the state pays for their share, and well over for the county. That being said, I do believe that State Representative Rogers is on the right track, and that we probably will get one in 4 or 5 years. I wouldn't have said that a year ago, but I think in 3 or 4 years, we probably, with this moving forward, we probably could get that. And then we have a facilities problem or facilities thing that we will have to deal with. I fully support going for new judges because we need it. Our courts need it. That being said, that puts an onus on us to how do we manage our facilities. And I will say this publicly again and again and again. Judges belong in courtrooms, not ancillary departments. And if we're going to put judges out on Gull Road or spread all throughout the county so that the prosecutor's office can be in the courthouse and not public defenders, that is a moral, I think that's morally wrong. I think what we need to do is we need to have equal access from both the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office with proximity to the judges. And most importantly, we need to make sure that the judges are in the courtrooms and not spread around the county. So as we partake in this endeavor that will take a few years, I hope Rep. Rogers, I think we'll get it done a lot quicker than maybe has been done in the past. But we've got some facilities planning to do, and I think that's some decision that we as a board need to make on that. So thank you, Rep. Rogers, and all that you do on this. But I think it's probably sooner than I originally thought, about 6-8 months ago, but it's still not going to be next year.
Good thing we're endeavoring in some significant facilities planning. Vice Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chair. I concur. I want to thank you for bringing this forward. Our courts need the help. I agree with what Vice Chair Taylor is saying, but it is on us to provide some facilities. It's also going to be on us to provide the support staff to assist those judges. And we need to work diligently now as we look down the road to house those. The county, years ago, we had 4 courtrooms. We had one down at Portage, one down at Schoolcraft, one over here, one out in Gull Road. We worked to consolidate them. We built a new courthouse out on Gull Road. We built one here, so we could get those judges in 2 locations, but to shrink down the number of places so our citizens would be better served, so they would be able to get to a courtroom and get their matters taken care of. So I think we need to continue that vision and try to keep the courts in the same area, and then provide the facilities they're going to need. So we've got a little time to work on it, but that doesn't mean we need to dilly-dally. We need to get looking at it, and thank you for bringing that forward. And I thank our judges who are out there in the audience tonight. We appreciate you coming in to, I assume, support this. I don't think you don't want, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Rogers. So that's the matter before us for first reading. We'll take that up for a final vote of support at our next session. All right. With that, we move to item 8, is opportunity for closed session. We have none that is needed this evening. Nothing else is before us. All right. With that, we are currently adjourned.